Hello, guys. Hello. Welcome to the Lila Rose podcast. Hey, guys. All right, we're doing the YouTube live today, and we've already got some people on here. Hey, Anthony. Hey, Bella. Saying hey, hi. We've got AJ on. Hey, AJ. Thanks, guys, for joining. We've got a lot to unpack today, and this is also Holy Week, so there's a lot of thoughts I have about that as we prepare for Easter and the resurrection of Christ. We also have some hit pieces from the Washington Post and TikTok attacking content creators who are criticizing birth control. So we're going to talk about that. Also, if you have any questions during the chat, during the conversation, feel free to put it in the chat box. I'm taking questions and I will be paying attention to the chat this time. So put your questions in there because I love to hear from you guys directly. We also have a bunch of questions coming in through different social media platforms, so we'll look at those questions too. But if you're here on YouTube and you're here watching this live and you've got any questions or comments, put them in the chat. I love to see them. Okay, I hope everyone's doing well. Can you believe that it is Holy Week? Lent is almost over, and chaos is happening as usual in the political and cultural world. Lots to break down there. I'm going to start with the Washington Post hit piece that came out just a few days ago about birth control. A lot to talk about there. We talk about this a lot on the show, women's fertility, birth control, abortion. There's so much to unpack. And TikTok is literally banning videos that criticize birth control. So if you have concerns about birth control's harms to women, birth control as an abortifacient, you might get in the crossfire of TikTok and they will literally ban your video. This is crazy because there's all kinds of insane stuff on TikTok, sexual material, there's all kinds of political opinions, far left opinions, there's gender ideology stuff. But if you're critical of birth control, you could get banned. I have been banned on TikTok. I think I've mentioned this before in the show. I had an account a few years ago that was completely banned simply for having pro-life content up. We actually just started a new TikTok to try again. So I'll actually try to link that in the bio if you guys do want to follow there. But it is clear that TikTok has an agenda. I don't think that anyone can deny that at this point. And it's run by the Chinese Communist Party. People know that too. It's owned by China ultimately, which is opposed to a lot of the values that we have on this show and values of not just free speech, but values of family and of life. So, hey guys. Hey Lisa. Thanks for joining the chat. Hey Peter. Thanks for joining. Awesome. Peter's saying, I just became a live action ambassador this year. Yay, that is awesome. By the way, if anybody listening was at Live Action's inaugural Young Leaders Summit last weekend, let me know and let me know what you think. So we had over 700 people here in Southern California. We had this first event for our Youth Leaders Summit, and it was a huge success. It was so fun to meet so many of you guys, and we had amazing speakers, and it was all talking about life, sex, relationships, and leadership and how to lead in our cultural environment. So just amazing people came, and I got to meet a bunch of you. So if you were there, let me know. And we're going to be doing it again, bigger and better next year, as well as other events. So stay tuned for that. Peter says, Live Action was a driving force behind me becoming pro-life. I'm so happy to hear that. That is awesome. That is our job, to educate and inspire. So thank you for sharing that. Hello, Dan. Top of the afternoon. All right. Hello, Georges. I hope I'm saying your name right. KMH has a question. We're going to do questions here in a minute. So if you've got questions, please drop them in the chat. I will be checking the chat throughout this live stream. All right, guys, we're going to start with Washington Post. Then we're going to talk about Christ being king. If you are on Twitter, you probably saw yesterday that Christ is king trended. Now, I think that's a beautiful thing because Christ is king. But we're going to unpack some of the really politics around the statement. Unfortunately, it's become politicized. And I'm just going to share my thoughts about what it means that Christ is king and how we as Christians can authentically live that out. I'm on a journey to try to live out my faith, as you guys know, imperfectly. And by God's power, all of us can do this together. And we can, I hope, help other people do it with us as well. So before we go into the Washington Post criticizing those who dare to criticize birth control, I'm going to thank our sponsors for this episode, two of them to start. 7 Weeks Coffee, you guys hear me talk about this a lot on the podcast. Have you guys had 7 Weeks Coffee yet? If you haven't, what are you waiting for? I just had my 7 Weeks Coffee this morning. This is gourmet, small batch, low acid, ethically sourced coffee. They have these amazing blends. I got the Burundi blend recently, which I loved. I don't know if it's sold out. You can check. That's 7weekscoffee.com. What I love about this company, the leadership is really wonderful. They're great people. So they're not just getting you the best in class coffee delivered to your door, but they're very pro-life, and they give 10% of everything that they make, not just their profits, just complete revenue, period. 10% goes directly to pregnancy resource centers to help moms and babies in need. So that means if you buy 7 Weeks Coffee, 10% of what you spent goes directly to pregnancy centers. And I think they've given away, I think it's over $300,000 now, and they've supported 700 different pregnancy centers. So it's kind of an amazing business to do that. So check them out, 7weekscoffee.com, and you can use the code Lila at checkout for 10% off your order. So what are you waiting for? And then similarly, Nimi Skincare, you guys hear me talk about Nimi Skincare. Again, another company run by amazing people, like-minded people. I love all these businesses starting, by the way, that are offering amazing products, but they're designed to share our values and actually support causes that we care about, because we know that the pro-abortion side, the left, is doing this constantly. And NimiSkincare.com is a healthy skincare company. They've got great products. They're very clean products. I do use these products every morning and night. I'm very picky about my skincare. I've tried a lot of different products, and I love Nimi. The products just work. They're simple lines. They work for different kinds of skin. And again, Nimi Skincare supports your values and is in line with the pro-life movement. So check out NimiSkincare.com too. If you haven't already, try them. It's a great time for it. Mother's Day is coming up. You can get some for your mom, or you can get some for the new mom that is in your life. Or if you're a new mom, you should treat yourself. Or if you're married to a new mom, treat her. That's NimiSkincare.com, and you can use Lila at checkout for 15% off your order. I love all these companies. It's so awesome that there are all of these pro-life aligned companies that are starting and have started and are growing rapidly. I mean, they're succeeding because they're great products, excellent customer service. These are great companies, but they share our values. So all the more reason we should ditch brands that oppose our values and support those that do. All right, let's pull up the Washington Post article. What does the Washington Post have to say today? All right, let's pull this up. We're going to start with the Instagram post from the Washington Post. So I just want to share, I go way back with the Washington Post. I remember being probably 19 years old and sitting in their headquarters in Washington, D.C., talking to their reporters about my investigative reporting of Planned Parenthood and trying to explain what we found and why they should report on it. And I remember talking to one of the lead healthcare reporters and explaining to her that Planned Parenthood, I think it was our investigation where Planned Parenthood was doing sex-selective abortion. So they would actually kill the baby girl just because she was a girl at the request of the mother. So we were documenting this and Planned Parenthood's willingness to commit sex selection abortion. I mean, how anti-feminist, right? Kill the baby just because she's a girl, because this parent wants a boy, and Planned Parenthood will do that. And it was like a later term abortion too. It was in the second trimester. And the healthcare reporter at the Washington Post office just looked at me and was saying, this can't be right. This can't be true. And I was like, I have the tapes. You want to see the tapes? I have the tapes. It was so much a shaking of her worldview as the healthcare correspondent at the Washington Post, that Planned Parenthood was Word of God for women's health, this great organization, that they would ever do anything that chipped away at her invincible support of them, that she was literally telling me to my face, that's impossible that you found this report, it's impossible that your report shows this, when I have it on tape, the Planned Parenthood worker saying, I hope you get your boy, and navigating and arranging a sex-selective abortion. So that's some of my history with Washington Post. So let's just say I'm not surprised that this reporting has happened recently from the Post. Okay, here's their Instagram, you guys can see. Let's pull this open. All right, so you can see here it says, you can scroll down, women are getting off birth control as misinformation explodes. So it's obviously presenting this as this horrible thing that a woman would not be on birth control. Well, the role of a woman is not in the kitchen. The role of the woman is on birth control. I mean, you better be on birth control, women. That is your role. And it says, search for birth control on TikTok or Instagram, and a cascade of misleading videos vilifying hormonal contraception will appear. Young women blame weight gain and depression on the pill. Right-wing commentators claim that birth control can lead to infertility. And then you read the description here and it says, if you scroll up a little bit, it says, physicians say they're seeing an explosion of birth control misinformation online. All right, already you see the bias staring you in the face, because they're positioning physicians, like at large, physicians, period, are concerned about the misleading misinformation on birth control. When the reality is there are thousands of physicians who also are concerned about birth control's harm to women. And there's increasingly more physicians who are trying to avoid prescribing birth control and actually searching out the underlying problems that their patient may be facing, whether it's cystic acne or it's endometriosis or other, heavy periods, to try to treat the underlying conditions that a woman's facing instead of just prescribing at willy-nilly, which is how it's done, birth control. So already they're being deceptive and misleading in the framing of their story. Surprise, surprise. All right, let's go to the article from Washington Post. Yours truly is quoted in this article, so we're going to go to that as well. So the Washington Post put out this piece. It's called, scroll to the top here. The headline is, Women Are Getting Off Birth Control Amid Misinformation Explosion. Again, as if women only will get off of birth control because they've been lied to, as opposed to maybe they're on birth control. Maybe, just maybe, women are on birth control because they've been lied to. Ever thought of that? That actually is the case for most women, and they get basic facts about birth control that they didn't have before about its risks or harms, and they say, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm getting off of it. So that's what's happening with a lot of women today, especially younger women who are more educated on this. Our parents' generation, keep in mind the history here. The pill entered the scene and was highly spread by use, recommended by physicians, et cetera. We're talking in the 60s, largely, later on 70s, 80s, now up till today. It became this kind of panacea, this sort of, yes, every woman should go on it, why not? And young girls increasingly have been prescribed it. And at the time, the pill as a technology was pretty new. It had been developed in the first part of the 20th century. And so people didn't really think about the harms or the risks. They just thought, hey, this is a great way to manage fertility. And if I'm not ready for a baby right now, I'm just going to take the pill. Unfortunately, there were a lot more harms than people had any idea about, and those have become increasingly made known. They're surfacing, and women are becoming aware of that, including their physicians, many physicians. And so there is a drop-off now in the use of contraception because of the facts that have emerged. And so it's this funny kind of intergenerational conflict happening too, where the older generation who just accepted birth control as a gift from God now are realizing the younger generation is not doing that because they realize its harms and also some of the ethical issues. And there's sort of this gap of how could you, how dare you? We took the drug, why not you? All right, let's look at the article here. So it has a lot of folks that are quoted, myself included, as I said, but I want to just point out a few things about this article. So first of all, it has this line, physicians and researchers say little data is available about the scale of this phenomenon, but anecdotally, more patients are coming in with misconceptions about birth control fueled by influencers and conservative commentators. So automatically, again, like I said earlier, it is positioning all the physicians and all the researchers as being pro-birth control. And all the people that are concerned about birth control as being these internet personalities and right-wing people, which nothing could be further from the truth. Some of the most consequential reporting that's been done on the birth control pill being harmful has been from left-wing magazines and outlets, and I'm going to get to that, and has been from feminists and those on the left who are willing to say, hey, this is an issue, this is causing problems, and has been from studies by the CDC and the NIH. So to say that this is just some phenomenon on the right is completely untrue. So you just see, again, lie after lie coming from the Washington Post. Let's go back to the article here and look at some of the quotes that they have. So if you scroll down, we've got a little informational video, but they talk about how influencers are seeking fame and fortune by decrying the birth control pill. So they just went from lying about who's criticizing it to now lying about the motivations of who's criticizing it and claiming that anybody who criticizes the birth control pill are wanting fame and fortune. I don't know how much fame and fortune has been earned. If anything, they've been shunned, people who've been brave enough to speak out against the pharmaceutical, medical, industrial complex that is pushing this on women. But again, it's just funny. It's ironic the way this article is written. It's kind of a parody piece of itself, you could say. All right, so moving on, it says, brings up an influencer who talked about how she got off of birth control and how her health improved. Okay, sounds like a common experience for a lot of women, but according to the Washington Post, this woman's crazy and she doesn't know what she's talking about, and that she just wants fame and fortune. Okay, no evidence to support your claim, Washington Post. The fact is, if you actually read even the insert on birth control pills and you actually talk to anybody who's honest, they can say, yes, weight gain can absolutely be a side effect of taking hormonal birth control. That's like a fact, even whether you're left or right, pro-birth control, anti-birth control, it's a fact. So for this TikTok girl to talk about how I actually lost weight that I had gained after going off birth control, and now my cycle is becoming regular again, and then to say that she just wants fame and fortune and she's spreading misinformation, it makes no sense. It just makes no sense here. All right, let's keep going. It's talking again, bashing this girl on TikTok. They pick a number of different women to bash who dared to speak out individually against birth control. Just sharing their stories, by the way, just sharing about how they went off of it. Social media companies struggle to combat misinformation and balance free speech protections, the Post reports. Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, says it works hard to protect online communities. Yes, protect online communities from these pesky women who dare to share that how they went off birth control and now they're feeling better for it. Protect the community from these horrible women who dare to share their personal stories. Got it, Washington Post. Understood here. And then it goes on to say, TikTok recently removed at least 5 videos linking birth control to mental health issues and other health problems. Again, there is research from the CDC and the NIH that shows that birth control can lead to anxiety, depression. It can lead to mood disorders, that you're deregulating your cycle ultimately. You're suppressing your cycle. And it can lead to mental health issues. Like that is not something that, and mental health, mood disorders, that's not something that is not, there hasn't been multiple studies and there's metadata showing the correlation between birth control use and mood disorders or mood disturbance. So again, major gaslighting from the Post here, but this gets even worse here. It gets even worse because it says TikTok recently removed at least 5 videos just daring to say, yeah, I was on birth control. I felt really depressed, got off of it, not depressed anymore. Yeah, I was on birth control, felt anxious, got off birth control, not anxious anymore. How dare you? TikTok says, how dare you? And so what did TikTok do? They literally deleted the videos. They literally deleted content on the platform because women dared to share their experience about how birth control was harmful to them. It also talks about the YouTuber who's fantastically talented, Brett Cooper. Let's find the part where it addresses her specifically. Here we go. Brett Cooper, a media commentator for the conservative Daily Wire. I love how they throw that in there. Are you the liberal Washington Post? Or do you call yourselves the liberal Washington Post? Because if you're going to call the Daily Wire the conservative Daily Wire, you better call yourselves the liberal Washington Post. But of course, they're not going to do that because, no, we're the Washington Post and we are endlessly fair and balanced and impartial. And it is obvious from our reporting, right? Okay, what do they have to say about Brett Cooper? I love Brett Cooper. She's a lovely, lovely voice online doing great things. She says, Cooper and political commentator Candace Owens denounced birth control pills and IUDs as unnatural. And it goes on to say that, or scroll up a bit here, it goes on to say that Brett Cooper argued in a viral TikTok clip that birth control can impact fertility and cause women to gain weight. And it racked up over 200,000 likes before TikTok removed it following the Post's inquiry. Wow. There you have it. Washington Post basically admitting we tattletaled to our friends at TikTok corporate, our friends in the Chinese Communist Party, whatever, our TikTok corporate, that there was some pesky woman, a commentator on TikTok with a persuasive voice, daring to share that birth control has been linked to infertility. It has. Daring to say that it may lead to weight gain. It can. And because of it, TikTok took action and deleted the video. My goodness, How crazy, how crazy. And here we go, Washington Post basically bragging about it. All right, we could keep going. I'm going to get down to my quote here because they do quote yours truly, as I said. And I want to talk about the context of the quote that they did of me. So if you go down here, this gets interesting, guys. This will be a little peek. This is like a case study, what I'm about to share with you, about how, especially, I'm going to call it pro-abortion, anti-values media, legacy media, how they spin, how they do their spin room. And this is really a really great case study because I'm very personally involved in every step of it. They emailed me for comment. I sent them comment. This is the comment they included. This is the article and the context within which they included it. It really shows how biased they are, but also how to construct a propaganda piece. I mean, that's what they've done here. This is propaganda. This is pro-birth control, anti-woman propaganda. So they have in here Stevenson, who's their expert. That's the other thing. It's all about who they quote. Always pay attention when you are reading a news article, if you still bother to read them from groups like the Washington Post. They're so biased. I don't know the value in reading them. But always look, excuse me. Always look when you are reading an article, what experts they choose to quote, who they choose to honor as the authority voice in the piece. That will tell you a lot about the bias or lack of bias of the reporter. Are they going to include the numerous experts, institutions, medical journals that have reported on birth control's harms in this article? Or are they going to quote people like this guy Stevenson, they're about to, who is an avid supporter of birth control? And of course, their Washington Post chooses the latter. So it talks about this guy named Stevenson, the first name. Let's scroll up here. It's a, who is Stevenson? Further up, this is like their one of their big experts here in the piece. And again, no experts that in any way criticize birth control. They're all supportive of it. It's Amanda Stevenson, who's a sociologist, demographer, and assistant professor who's studying the trend of those that are trying to restrict birth control. So she's very pro-birth control, but she's also the expert on knowing why and who is pro-birth control, okay? So what does she say? Let's scroll down. She talks about yours truly. She says, Stevenson pointed to pronouncements by Lila Rose. I am pronouncing, I'm sorry, it's just funny. I am pronouncing the truth about birth control. Actually, what I did, we're going to get to this in a minute, is I sent a very lengthy email to the Washington Post with all of this data in it that were not my pronouncements, but were links that they could read if they were journalistic enough about the harms of birth control. But no, these are my pronouncements, because to the Washington Post, I have always been and I will always be a crazy zealot. And that's what they have to, that's how they have to position me and all my friends who are in this article who dare to criticize birth control, because it's their agenda. All right. Lila Rose, anti-abortion activist, hundreds of thousands of followers in social media, has urged women to get off birth control in what Stephen called an effort to stigmatize it. We're trying to shame women here, of course, according to the Washington Post expert. All right, so this is the quote they quoted me. To be anti-fertility is to be anti-woman. And the proliferation of hormonal birth control is just another way of trying to force women to be more like men, with significant consequences for our emotional and physical health. Basically, the use of birth control today is panacea to say that we're not going to understand the underlying conditions of a disorder you may have as a woman. Your body is different than a man's body. Your issues will be different than a man's issues, typically. Not always, but if they're connected to your reproductive system. And so we want you to just deal with you the way we deal with a man in healthcare. So we want to shut down and suppress your fertility systems. We're not going to look at the underlying conditions of what you're dealing with. And when it comes to fertility, you know, a man is fertile 100% of the time, typically, a healthy man, right? Women are fertile a few days a month. But look at how healthcare treats fertility and management of fertility. There's no birth control pills for men. Surprise, surprise. The woman is the one who's shutting down ovulation. Why? In order to, that's the way to deal with your fertility, as opposed to fertility awareness and management, to know that this is when I'm pregnant. If I'm not ready to have a child right now and I need to space a child, whatever the reason is, we can delay I can delay intercourse, I can delay having sex during my fertile window and getting awareness of her cycle. Instead, no, it's the woman's responsibility. Instead of working with the man, hopefully she's married to him, they're having a family together, it's now her responsibility to take this pill that has negative consequences to her. Man doesn't have a responsibility here. He expects her to take the pill. In fact, societally today, especially with hookup culture, cohabitation where they don't want kids, the man's like, you better be on birth control. That's your job, right? That's your job, woman. I'm perpetually fertile. That's not my deal. It's your deal. How is this pro-woman? How is this pro-womanhood and fertility, the uniqueness of what makes us a woman? It's all against us. So that's my quote. But let's go to my email to them, because this quote was one very small part of a lengthy email that I sent the Washington Post. And I want to go through this with you guys to debunk the Washington Post's lies about birth control. So these are some very valuable facts for you about the harm of birth control that I think that you should know, we should know, and that we should be able to share with other people. I'm going to check the chat here too. Maddie Grace says, linking birth control and infertility is a logical cause and effect. Well, you're right, Maddie. Birth control is obviously designed to render you at least temporarily infertile. That is a fact. So it's kind of a no-brainer that yes, it does lead to infertility because it's designed for it. But there are also long-term consequences for some women who struggle with infertility after the frequent use of hormonal birth control. Okay, so let's go to the email here. So Lauren Rubber had emailed me back in January. She's a reporter for the Washington Post. She calls herself a health reporter. And she said, Lila, I'm working on a story about social media and hormonal birth control and have seen some of your public comments. I would love to hear your thoughts on the following questions. And then she sent a list of questions. I wrote a set of responses, so I'm going to go through these responses. Already, I think it's important to note that this reporter was going into this story instead of actually weighing the real concerns that medical experts and researchers and doctors and women have about birth control against the facts that are available from that research and that study, and kind of weighing, yes, these are some of the harms, this is where there's controversy about it. She's just going full hog with the narrative that there isn't harm. Social media is full of people saying that there is, and they're all lying, or they're all misinformed dummies, right? That's her narrative established already, and you can see it even in the questions that she's asking me. So the first question she sent me was, you have called birth control an abortifacient. Can you explain why? Okay, pretty straightforward. Birth control can absolutely be an abortifacient. In fact, if you read the insert in a birth control package, right, the paper insert, it will say that it actually can prevent not just fertilization, but implantation. What that means is it's possible that for women on hormonal birth control, the baby can still be conceived. There can still be fertilization between a sperm and an egg. An early embryo can be formed. And that embryo then, after the next few periods of days, a period of a few days, will, if it's, he or she is healthy, will migrate to the uterus to implant. That's called implantation. And at that point is when the baby's heart usually starts beating within a short time. So it's an incredible process, an incredible journey. And birth control companies themselves admit, well, birth control isn't just designed, a lot of it, to prevent fertilization, to prevent the embryo from being created, but it also can prevent the embryo from implanting by hardening or making the uterus a hostile environment for the baby to implant. And that would mean that the birth control pill is designed to be an early term abortion. And this is true of IUDs typically, and other forms of long-acting, they call it LARCs, long-acting reversible contraception, but long-form contraceptions like contraceptives like IUDs. So that's not my opinion. That's not my belief. That's a fact that even the manufacturers of birth control, of many forms of birth control, admit to. So I wrote that response as much to the reporter. Of course, this response is not included in the piece. The piece doesn't address this at all. Why? Because it's very inconvenient for women to know this. They don't want women to know that the birth control that you may be taking may also be working as an early term abortion, an early term abortifacient. most women have no idea that the birth control pill is designed to do not just one, but two things, typically prevent fertilization of a baby, but then also force an early miscarriage via making the uterus a hostile environment. All right. So there's that, of course, not reported in the piece. Okay. Let's go to the next one here. Someone in the chat is saying, doesn't every medicine have side effects listed? Why is birth control different? Great question. I mean, you're watching, for those that still watch like cable news or something, you see those commercials for like the latest, I don't know, drug for diabetes or whatever it is. And then there's the smiling family and the smiling, the dog running through the field. And they're saying, this medication may cause vomiting, weight loss, and suicide and death. Please take under prescription with the advice of your doctor, whatever, right? You've probably heard that commercial before. Why does birth control not be held to any of the same standards? Why is it that birth control should actually not receive any criticism? Well, it's the agenda of the Post, of course. And by the way, the Washington Post later on in their article will go on to promote and support this new kind of birth control, which they want to be available over the counter without prescription, so a 12-year-old can go and pick it up and buy it from the store like a Snickers bar. That's what the Washington Post is like, end game agenda in the article is. So we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, second question that the Washington Post asked me. Why is there a movement among prominent conservative commentators, including yourself, to question the safety of hormonal birth control? Well, listen, to be clear, ever since I started doing any kind of public commentary over 15 years ago, I have been criticizing the harm of the birth control pill and the mass use and pushing of the pill on women. I've been talking about this for probably 15 plus years now. So this isn't a new phenomenon. This has been happening for over a decade. What's happening increasingly is more women are becoming aware of the harms of birth control, women on both sides of the political spectrum. And it's not just conservative commentators that are reporting on this. In fact, there's a lot of left-wing groups that have reported on this as well. And so I address that to the Post. I tell them this. So I tell them, first of all, many women are rejecting hormonal contraceptives because they have seen in their own life or in the lives of those close to them the detrimental effects of these contraceptives. The concern about the safety of hormonal contraception is not exclusive to some conservatives, but it spans different ideologies, faiths, political backgrounds, different levels of expertise. You can be a researcher and have the concern, and an everyday woman who just experiences the birth control and has the concern. And then I actually quote some of this research. So I start with, as an example, Vogue magazine. Vogue magazine is not a conservative pub, okay? This is not a right-wing outlet, Vogue magazine. In case you didn't know, Vogue magazine is very left-wing. You could argue as left-wing as they come. And Vogue magazine says that younger women are turning away from the pill in droves. So they didn't make it about left versus right. They just say younger women are not wanting this anymore. An NHS, British National Health Service study found that the number of women in contact with sexual and reproductive health services who used user-dependent contraception, including the pill, had dropped by more than 13% between 2005 and 2015. This is not about left versus right. This is women in general who are getting off of the pill, according to a survey by NHS. It goes on to say, or I go on to share with them this other report from NCBI. So this is the Institute for Quality and Efficiency in Healthcare, who talk about the side effects that women face from birth control. So this is a study. It's actually multiple studies talking about headaches, nausea, sore breasts, vaginal yeast infections, spotting between periods, mood swings. Remember, they were so critical of criticizing mood swings. The TikToker who said, yeah, my mood was horrible. Reduction of sexual desire, and blood clots. These are all side effects that are documented from hormonal contraception, not according to some right-wing commentator, but according to the Institute for Quality and Efficiency in Healthcare, published in a medical journal. Even the FDA, our Food and Drug Administration, has added that high blood pressure and weight gain, to the list of risks and side effects to a woman's health who takes birth control. The National Cancer Institute confirms that hormonal birth control puts women at an increased risk of breast cancer and cervical cancer. These are not right-wing pubs, Washington Post. And interestingly, The Washington Post failed to include any of this research or these links, these studies that I sent them in their report. They failed to even mention that such things exist in their report. Instead, all they had to say was that crazy right-wingers are lying to women online and should be banned and censored by TikTok. So the amount of dishonesty here is staggering. It's really staggering that someone who is a trained journalist would go through the process of trying this hard to be this dishonest. All right, she also asked me, some experts say you are working to vilify hormonal birth control in order to limit access to it. Do you have a response? And I responded by saying, many experts criticize hormonal birth control, including, many doctors, researchers. I mentioned Dr. Geraldine C. Pryor here. There's Dr. Jolene Brighton. She has a whole website that gathers the harms of birth control and encourages women to get off of it because it's harmful to their health. I mean, this is not like one, and these are not people on the right. These are not people politically on the right. These are people who are simply concerned about women's health care. So again, the misinformation here from the Washington Post, the framing to try to make this big conservative conspiracy, which it's obviously not. All right, last question. That was the last question from the Post. I go on to, share my quote here about how it's actually anti-woman to say that our fertility is a disease. That's true. Your fertility as a woman is not a disease. It is actually a sign of health, and it's an essential function of your body that interacts with all the other systems in your body. And don't let any doctor or medical professional who's, by the way, working with big pharma, they're selling pills, they're giving out drugs. Don't let them just tell you, oh, your medical condition you're facing, you just take birth control and you'll be fine. That's the best I can do for you. If you are struggling as a woman, you have health issues you're struggling with, find the medical professionals who are actually going to help you get to the bottom of the issues that you're facing. Don't accept a medical professional that's just going to slap birth control prescription in your hand and say, go take care of it. It's not going to take care of it. It will have side effects. You deserve better. That is my message for women. And then in addition, educate yourselves. Let's be educated about the fact that birth control can be an abortifacient. And in addition, we should be embracing our fertility as women, and we should embrace sexual ethics that say we shouldn't just be, again, having sex just anytime, anywhere. It's not a big deal. There's not sexual morality around it. And so if we get pregnant, just use birth control to prevent pregnancy. If you get pregnant and you were using birth control, you can just have an abortion. That whole system, that whole societal system today of sex is not sacred. Just have it, whatever. It's your choice as long as there's consent. Just use birth control. You'll be fine. Oops, you're pregnant. Go get an abortion. That whole framework is not serving anyone. It's hurting everyone. And it's a framework that is rife with ethical issues. There's a reason there's a moral construct around sex. It's for good because sex is a design. And sex is designed to bring human life into the world, not in every situation, but in many. And sex is designed to bond two people together. That's a beautiful thing. And that's why I am always talking about the beauty of sex and marriage, because you are committed for life to this person and you're willing to raise a family with them. So if life comes from your union, that life is not seen as a threat and rejected via abortion or otherwise, but you're ready to embrace that beautiful new human life. So sex is designed for unity. Sex is designed for procreation. Let's not dismiss that or shut it down and hate on that, which is what we seem to have popularized in today's culture. All right, let me know your guys' thoughts on that. I'm going to look at the chat here, and then we're going to go to the Christ is King Twitter trend yesterday, as well as the fact that Christ is King, and this is Easter week. So there's some other comments here. Lisa says, I told my sisters about how birth control may act as an abortifacient years ago, and I was very ignored. One sister was even angry. I'm sorry to hear that. It's good that you're talking about it, though, because these things can be tough for people to hear. When you've been told one thing your whole life and you've acted on that one thing you've been told, and then you find out that what you've been told your whole life and acted on is not true anymore, that can be a hard pill to swallow. So I can understand why they might have been upset and not wanted to believe what you had to say, but it's good for you to share what you know because it's to help them, right? We don't share this information about birth control and fertility and sex. We don't share it in any way to harm or hurt or shame or anything. It's to love. It's to help people have the facts that they deserve to be healthy, and also to live lives and make good choices so that we can all be happier. I mean, that is the beautiful thing about truth, is it does help people in the end, even if because of all the lies of the culture, it can be hard to listen to at first. All right, so let's go to Christ is King now. Let me know if you guys saw this on Twitter trending yesterday. I logged in later in the evening and it was trending, and I was looking at what was trending. And first of all, he is king. He's king of my life. As you guys know, I'm a Christian. My Catholic faith is the most important thing to me. Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. So I love the phrase because it is the truth of my life. I want to talk about what that means, especially in like the Twitter context and sometimes more political contexts. But before I do that, I have to thank our last two sponsors for the podcast today. And first of all, I want to thank Good Ranchers. You guys hear me talk about Good Ranchers, goodranchers.com. Again, pro-family, pro-life company. But what's really cool about Good Ranchers is they've identified that 90% of the meat in your grocery store comes from not this country. Even though it says made in the USA on it, a lot of it is coming from out of the country, from being imported in from other nations. And they don't always have the same health standards. They're not always sourced the same. And so the reality is we don't know. You don't know where your meat or your chicken is coming from, even if the package says made in the USA. And there's a solution for that. You can and you should know where your meat and your poultry and your pork or your fish is coming from. And you can from Good Ranchers, because goodranchers.com will ship you your favorite subscription box every month or every other week if you want, of your hand-picked meats, poultry, fish, pork, whatever it is that you want. It's an amazing company. It's run by amazing people, by the way. They're on a mission. They're beautiful people supporting pro-life causes. But goodranchers.com is the website. Check them out. Order a box. You can actually get, I think it's a year of free chicken is the deal right now if you use the code Lila at checkout. When you order a subscription. So they always have amazing deals going on. You can use that code at checkout, and it's goodranchers.com. And then our last sponsor today, last but not least, is Every Life. I love Every Life. Okay, I also know the people that run this company. Very good, salt of the earth people. Every Life is the fastest growing baby product company in the country right now. So big shout out to everylife.com. And they sell diapers and wipes, again, a subscription service, direct to consumer, cut out the middleman. And they're amazing products. So these are like low leak diapers, great materials for your baby's skin, all the things. And the price point is good. And they support the pro-life movement. So they literally did a diaper drive with Live Action. And it was over 1,000 packages of diapers to moms in need. So they're doing very cool stuff too. So check them out today. That's everylife.com. And there's also a discount code there, as there are all these sites. If you use the code Lila, you get a discount on your first order. So it's Holy Week, guys. Yesterday was Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday is when we remember and we celebrate Jesus entering Jerusalem before Passover and before his crucifixion and then resurrection. And he's fulfilling the prophecy, and he's entering Jerusalem riding on a donkey. And the people are so excited because he just performed all these miracles. He'd done all this preaching, and he has this very passionate following him into Jerusalem. And they're waving palm branches and laying down their clothes and their palm branches before Jesus as he rides into Jerusalem on this gentle little donkey. And many people at the time, when Jesus came into the world over 2,000 years ago and he started performing miracles and amassing all these crowds, many people, very zealous people, wanted Jesus Christ to be their king. The Jews were awaiting the Messiah, the Jewish people, and for some of the Jewish people, they believed that Messiah would set them free from Roman rule, and that Messiah would be this powerful ruler who would come with a sword and fight and save the Jewish people from persecution and establish a kingdom here on earth. That was the belief of many Jews, not all, but many. And when Jesus Christ came, born in a manger in Bethlehem, truly a king, but born in poverty. And Jesus Christ came, and people would try to make him king when he was doing his miracles and preaching. They would literally want to make him king and crown him king, and he would flee them. He would say, "My kingdom is not of this world." He literally said to them, "My kingdom is not of this world," that he was not there to bring a sword to fight the Roman Empire, but he was there ultimately. He was going to come to die on a cross in public humiliation for the sins of all people. So I think when we say Christ is king, we have to understand both the historical context and the spiritual context of the phrase and what it really means, because it does not mean political power in this world. It does not mean that. It means eternal, sovereign reign of our God, who is omniscient, omnipowerful, omnipresent. He is the king of the universe, but he chose while on earth to die and be treated as the least of these for the sake of our salvation. I want to share 3 Bible verses that I think are good for us to meditate on as we enter this last week before Easter. These last few days of Lent, this is Holy Week. There's going to be Good Thursday. There's going to be Good Friday. There's going to be Holy Thursday, Good Friday. There's going to be, obviously, Saturday when Jesus is in the tomb, and then we're going to have the resurrection of Christ on Easter Sunday. And the first verse that I want to read here is from Matthew 11:28. And this is what Jesus is asking from us and what he's offering to us this week. So this is a verse for us, for all of us this week. Jesus says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Jesus is saying, I'm here ultimately for your rest. I'm here for you to learn from me and to follow me, and I am gentle and lowly in heart. What was the spirit of our Lord during his passion? Gentleness, lowliness of heart. He told Peter, who got impassioned, or one of his disciples who got impassioned and cut the ear off one of the Roman soldiers trying to defend Jesus from getting captured in the garden while he was having his final agony, and before Judas Iscariot betrayed him with the kiss, he told him, those who live by the sword die by the sword. He didn't want him to fight the Roman soldiers. He said, let them take me. He had a posture of complete submission because he was there to give his life, not to rule in an earthly way, but to give his life. So that is the spirit I think we are called to as Christians. It's one that I need to live and I need to wrestle with. I'm a work in progress. And that's the spirit of meekness and humility of heart. So if we're going to go out and triumphantly say Christ is King, as we can and we should, we do it with that meekness and humility of heart, knowing that the kingship that we claim, that is Jesus Christ, is over our lives and over the universe. But in this life, we will have suffering. In this life, we will have political powers that oppose us. In this life, we will have the spiritual battles that we play out. And our path to holiness isn't to grab at power in this life, political power in this life. Although we want to make good progress in our institutions and we want to, fight the pro-life fight, we need to fight these battles. But our path to holiness and our path to help convert other souls is not a grab at power and control and authority, but it's a radical submission in the honoring and in the obedience to Jesus Christ, a radical submission of our hearts to God and a service of other people. The next Bible verse that I want to read is when Jesus says in John 18:36. This is very important. He says, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would my servants fight, that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from hence." This is really important because some of the Christ is King content that's happening online is said by many Christians, kind of saying it to the Jews, those who are practicing Jews online, because you can be a Jewish Christian. Jesus was a Jewish Christian, okay? Mary was a Jewish Christian. The first Christians were Jews. So this idea of like Christians versus Jews is already weird, a weird construct that's incorrect. But there are practicing Jews, of course, who do not see Jesus Christ as the Messiah, Jesus Christ, the historical person, Jesus Christ, God, and they are still living out their Judaism, their faith as they are. And so there is this trend that I'm seeing of some Christians online who are saying basically to Jewish bosses or people in the conservative movement or elsewhere, and it's kind of caught up in the politics of the Israel-Gaza war. I mean, there's all of these nuances, but basically saying, well, Christ is King, take that, take that. you don't want to take the holy words of Christ as King and use it as some sort of put down against your Jewish brothers and sisters, okay, or anybody. You can say it in truth and in its beauty and in the joy that you know saying it, because he is the King of the universe. But to use it as some sort of a political statement and then to feign ignorance that, oh, you're taking offense because you're just a Jew or something, when you were intending it specifically at Jewish people, that's not living the Christian spirit of meekness and gentleness. That's not living the spirit of this Holy Week. So I think we need to be cautious about maybe the zealousness with which we want to proclaim Christ's kingship, and make sure that that zealousness is towards his eternal sovereignty and not towards us wanting more political power and media power in this life. Because that's some of the other narratives happening online. It's like, well, Christians are being persecuted in media, and there's some anti-Semitic tropes about how the Jews are persecuting Christians in media. And it's just that whole pathway of politicizing the words of our Lord, the truth about our Lord, that he is King, is antithetical to the Christian spirit with which we should have. And Jesus Christ specifically saying, my kingdom is not of this world. He's saying to us as Christians, your job is not to build systems of power in media and politics and all these things. Yes, you may be called to do work in media and politics, to reform it, to bring salt and light, but my kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom is a world that is eternity. I am the sovereign Lord in eternity. And in this world, we will have suffering. In this world, we will have persecution. In this world, our answer may not be to clutch at political power, especially if we're going to be compromising anything in the process, but it may be to endure suffering for a time. And that is the Christian way and always has been. You know, the early church was founded on the blood of the martyrs. The blood of the martyrs who didn't band together and form militias to fight Roman rule and overthrow it, but the blood of the martyrs who peaceably gathered to try to live out their faith and then were snatched up and persecuted, and even when they were persecuted, refused to compromise, refused to deny their faith. But it's not like they went to physical war with the Romans at the time to go fight them and stop them. And again, I'm not saying you can't do self-defense as a Christian. I mean, there's so much nuance here, but I think the spirit is the key. The spirit of humility, the spirit of meekness, with which is what we are called to. And I'm remembering that the Christian project here on earth can involve working in politics. It certainly does for many. It involves it for me. But the end of the Christian project here on earth is not political power. It's not some monarchy here on earth, but it's an eternal kingdom that we are aiming towards. And in this life, we may have trouble. And if we face that trouble, if we face discrimination or persecution as Christians in this life, our response should not be immediately to grab the sword and say, how dare you? How dare you? Christ is King. And I'm going to fight you back, and we're going to band together. But our response should be, I love you. Christ is King. I love you. And I am here to bring the gospel and try to suffer as best I can the way my Lord did, right? Last Bible verse I want to share. This is from Matthew 7:21-23. Now, these are serious words from Christ. And I think this is the cautionary note I want to include here, guys. Jesus Christ says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. On that day, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Cast out demons in your name? Do many mighty works in your name? Did we not tweet Christ is King in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you evildoers. Now, I take this personally because this is to me as much as it is to anyone listening. We can say all the right things. We can believe all the right things. We can even do mighty works we think for God, Lord, Lord, wanting to build his kingdom, build power to serve him. It's about, we're saying it's for him. We prophesied in his name. But if our hearts are not right, if our hearts are not truly seeking, in the end, the glory of Jesus and truly seeking to grow in humility and love love of him and love of others, then we should be concerned. And Jesus is warning us to be concerned, because at the end of the day, the purity of our heart, the Lord looks at our hearts. And I can't judge the heart of really anyone on Twitter exactly. I mean, you can see their words and you can say, oh, that doesn't look good about their hearts if their words are this, right? You can make that prudential, you can be discerning in that way, right? But at the end of the day, it is what matters is what is in our hearts, and the Lord sees that. And so I want to encourage all of us. This is Holy Week, the last few days of Lent, and this is the time to make our hearts right. And the power of God's grace is this, that even if we have one movement of our heart towards the good and say, Lord, I know I've got bad things in my heart. Maybe I've got bias or prejudice in my heart. Maybe I have unholy anger in my heart. Maybe I have envy in my heart. Maybe I have, whatever it is in my heart, lust in my heart, whatever it is. Lord, help me. Lord, help me. I want to be pure of heart. Help me. Be my heart. Give me your heart, Lord. Go to confession. Many of you listening are Catholic, not all, but you can go to confession. It's an incredible last few days before we celebrate the Triduum, before Easter, that you can go to confession. Tell the Lord where you're at. Open your heart to him. And let's together encourage each other to be meek and humble of heart. This can be hard to be, especially on social media, on Twitter. What does it mean to be meek? What does it mean to be humble? We should probably do an episode exploring these things, because these words can be thrown around. But the core of it is this: Jesus Christ came into the world not to overthrow the Roman Empire by force and institute himself as king in an earthly way, and to have the political power in an earthly way, which is one of the reasons many of the Jews didn't want to accept him, because he wouldn't do it. Jesus Christ came into the world to bring the truth and to die on the cross for our sins, laid out in a position of ultimate humiliation and extreme suffering. And he could have in an instant gotten off that cross and blown up the whole place, been the Lord in a moment in an earthly way. He chose not to. He chose to suffer. And he tells us to learn from him and to be gentle and lowly of heart like he was, for the sake of souls. So what a beautiful Lord we have, King we have, and what an example we have to follow. And the good news is this: he will give us the strength for what he will ask from us. He will give us the strength for what he will ask from us. He always will. He always has. And that's why he says, come to me, all you who are weary. He's like, I will give you the strength you need. So this Holy Week, go to him, open your heart, confess your sins, and let's enter into a beautiful celebration come this Sunday, when we get to proclaim with true joy and great gratitude that he is the King of our souls and the King of the universe. All right, there's my thoughts on Christ as King. Let's go to the chat for a few minutes, and then we're going to close out here. Any questions? Let's pull up a few questions I got in via Instagram. We've got some here. Tishmal says, Jesus, meek and humble of heart, make my heart like unto mine. Thank you, Tishmal. That's beautiful. I love that. Jesus, meek and humble of heart, make my heart like unto thine. Maria says, I love this perspective. That's what being Catholic is about. Thank you for using your platform to explain this. Thank you, Maria. Liliana, Lila, how are you feeling with this pregnancy? I have a 19-month-old daughter, and just this past week has gone through a miscarriage. Seeing you glow with this pregnancy brings me so much joy. First of all, Liliana, I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm so sorry about your miscarriage. That is so tough. And we will be praying for you this evening in our family prayers. I know miscarriage can be so painful. I'm sorry for the loss of your little one. Thank you for your kind words. And I know when you have your own pregnancy loss, it can be a loss of your baby. It can be hard when you see other women pregnant. I remember having a miscarriage and just experiencing other women at the time pregnant too, and then they didn't miscarry, and just, I was happy for them, but it just reminds you too of your own loss. But I know the Lord had a plan, and I'm so grateful. I mean, I've got like 2 more weeks basically before this baby is due, so we're really gearing up for her. We can't wait. Her little brothers are so excited to meet her, and I'm feeling pretty good. I think I have a little bit of the absent-mindedness. I lose track of what I'm thinking, extra tired, uncomfortable, all the normal things. But thank you for bearing with me during this live stream, by the way, guys, because I do think pregnancy brain is real, and I do think I've been having it lately with the podcast. So you may have already noticed that, but it is a real thing. All right, here's some questions, and then we'll close out here. Starting out here, what strategies are most effective in converting people to pro-life? So I think that there's numerous approaches that we can take, but I think engaging people personally, asking them questions about why they believe what they believe on a personal level is very powerful if you're going to have a conversation about abortion with someone. So really understand, like, what do you believe? Why do you think abortion's okay? Why, what is your position on it? When do you think life begins? The Socratic method of just asking them questions about where they're at often leads to really fruitful conversations. I also want to recommend 2 resources. One of them is abortionprocedures.com, and this is a live action resource that shows the most prominent or the most prevalent abortion procedures in the first, second, and third trimester. It's not gory. These are animated medical depictions of what happens during the procedures. And we found that simply showing that and talking about it, what happens during these abortion procedures, can be mind-changing for many people. So I would say that's a great resource to actually talk about what abortion is. And another great resource is to talk about human development and when life begins. And another great resource that Live Action has created is called Baby Olivia. You can go to babyolivia.com, and it shows all the gestational markers of the child's development. Another great website is Window to the Womb, which is every single day of pregnancy, you can see the developmental markers, and you can talk to someone, is this a human life? Do you think it is? Should human lives, all of them, be protected and given the right to life? And at what point in this development of this baby would it be okay to kill them? I mean, when you think about it that way, it's amazing the conversations that you may have and open up with somebody who beforehand supported abortion. All right, we're going to take another question here. Actually, if you can scroll up, there was a question about prayer time, which I saw earlier, which I think we'll end with because we are in Holy Week here. I think we got in a lot of questions. I saw it might be at a different slide here, but the question was basically, actually, let me just pull it up directly here. So the question is, how do you fit in, okay, here we go. I thought this was an interesting question. How do you fit in rosary time with job, kids, extracurriculars, etc.? The rosary, of course, is a very special prayer where you are basically saying scripture. You're saying, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. And then you ask for the Blessed Mother's intercession. So I know a lot of non-Catholics listen to this show as well as Catholics, so I'll just do my best shot at explaining this because I think it's really valuable. There was actually another question about how do you respond to the concern that Catholics worship Mary. We should probably do a whole episode on this at some point. Let me know if you want me to do that. But no, Catholics do not and should not worship Mary. They venerate Mary, and Mary is the Mother of God, so she's worth venerating, like an incredible role model. And she's also seen as someone who can pray for us. And there's scriptural evidence for Mary interceding, and she does that with Jesus' first miracle. She's the one who comes to Jesus at the wedding feast at Cana and says, they have no wine. And Jesus says, woman, what does it have to do with me? And she basically says to the servants, do as he tells you. And Mary is the one who notices there's a problem, and an everyday problem, like they don't have food at the wedding. I mean, she's very practical as this mother, and she's telling Jesus, do something about it. And Jesus listens to her. And Jesus performs his first miracle after being prompted by his mother. And Jesus included that and had that included in Holy Scripture, I think, to show us the power of Mary's yes to God's will and Mary's request of God. Now, this doesn't mean that Jesus didn't want to perform the miracle. It doesn't mean that Jesus, wouldn't have performed a miracle. It means that Jesus allowed in his basically his environment of graces, Jesus allowed Mary to play an important role. And I think that role was not just for time and space, one time in this scriptural story, but it's for all time, because Mary is the Queen of Heaven. And, in Revelation, they talk about the Queen holding the child and wearing a crown, and you talk about the dragon trying to attack the child coming from the Queen, from the woman, the virgin. This is all an illustration of Mary. She's a real person that's in heaven forever with God. So all this to say, I believe we can ask for Mary's prayers. we can get into this in another episode about, well, wasn't she dead? Praying to the dead. It's not praying to the dead per se. She's very much alive. She's in heaven forever, and she's sitting, glorifying God forever, and that her intercession is powerful. So the rosary is remembering Mary and her incredible role in salvation history as the mother of God, and it's asking for her prayers. And I was asked, well, how do you pray the rosary when you're so busy? Great question. The way that we do it as a family is that each night before bed, we sit down and have family prayers, my husband and our 2 little boys. The boys are kind of crazy. The prayers usually last like 10 to 15 minutes. And sometimes they'll participate, sometimes they'll just be crazy. But we pray a decade of the rosary together as a family, as well as pray for all of our intentions, thank God for all of his blessings, and just have this beautiful time of prayer. So we do that very faithfully every night. Again, sometimes it's crazy because they're 2 and 4-year-old, but sometimes they participate, and it's beautiful. They'll pray part of the rosary, or they'll pray for their friends, or once in a while they'll say, I pray for Papa, I pray for Mama, and it's a great way to ensure that we are praying at least part of the rosary each day. So highly recommend even abbreviated family prayer time in the evening and including the rosary in your devotion. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Lila Rose podcast. Thank you to the chat. Thank you for the comments coming in from the chat. I really appreciate you guys joining for this live stream. And I appreciate you guys listening on podcasts later after the fact. Don't forget to subscribe to the show if you haven't already. And if you haven't already, check out our Patreon and our locals. These are our special community pages where we are building up more behind the scenes access in the future, especially when I come back from maternity leave. We have some great stuff in store for you guys. But if you become a monthly subscriber now, you help the podcast reach more people. Thanks so much, guys, and we will see you next time.